we can set up.
Okay, today on Pro Mindset, this is your host, Craig Domann, and I've got a very fascinating, awesome young man by the name of Nick Hardwick. Nick is a former client, former NFL player. He's a father, he's a husband, he's an entrepreneur. Nick, welcome to Pro Mindset.
Craig, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm glad you're on, man. Hey, let's why don't you share with everybody your story and then follow that up with what are you doing now? So your story,
Okay.
I'm gonna give you some clues because I don't want you to like talk for 20. I want you to talk for a few.
Yeah, I'll give you a little elevator story.
Elevator story, but I want to tee you up.
Okay.
You were a wrestler from Indianapolis, and you were a part-time student, mostly partier at Purdue University.
Kind of.
Then what happened from there? Where did it go from there?
High school wrestler, didn't play football. I was undersized, which is why I didn't play football. I played as a kid, but then I got there and I was 5'4", 135 as a freshman. And I figured this wasn't going to be in the cards for me, even though I loved the sport and I was physically natured. So I became a wrestler. I ended up my senior year of high school getting second place in the state of Indiana at 171 pounds. I was probably 6'1", 6'2", 171. And then I go to college and I hit a growth spurt. I gained 2 inches. I put on what ended up being 35 pounds, getting up to 230. And it was in the middle of Drew Brees mania. Purdue went to the Rose Bowl for the first time since 1967, won the Big Ten title for the first time since then. And it was absolute pandemonium there. And every boy at that school that had ever played football wanted to be a part of the team. And I was one of those kids. And I actually I was in school I was on ROTC scholarship. I wanted to be a Navy pilot. I found out I was colorblind, so I switched over to the Marine Corps side of things. And I was like, I'll do the next badass thing. I'll be a infantryman. And one of my buddies in the Navy ROTC saw an ad in the student paper, the Purdue Exponent, and it had a tiny little ad in the classified section for Purdue walk-on tryouts. Well, about 105 other boys and me, Frank Avino, and my roommate David Moore ended up showing up for these tryouts. I have no idea why they selected me. I actually lied on my intake form. They said, what position did you play in high school? And I said, defensive end, linebacker. Because you don't want to say I didn't play, right? So I told a little fib, and I got that from scrubbing the internet and kind of figuring out, what height and weight I kind of was roughly. And I was like, maybe DN, linebacker. I don't really know. And ended up playing, obviously. I started as a linebacker for 6 a.m. workouts. They quickly moved me to defensive tackle, where I spent about a year plus. And then they moved me over to guard. I was a starting left guard on day one, the day they moved me over. They were in such dire straits at the position. Our starting left guard got injured. They needed a guy. They picked me for some random reason. I was the starter. I ended up starting that year. Our center got hurt the last regular season game. So in the bowl game, my 4th year against the University of Washington, I ended up starting at center. And I knew right away I had a future in the position and in the sport. And that was just my home. Being a center it fit my skill set perfectly as a wrestler, a little bit undersized, really quick first step, fast hands, and confident enough to be able to make calls and get them wrong and not be beat up about it. So ended up being my spot. I started there for 1 more year at Purdue. So total, I probably had like 15 to 16 starts under my belt. And I got into the Senior Bowl and got drafted with the 3rd pick of the 3rd round of the 2004 draft. Went to the Chargers of San Diego at the time, and started from almost day one there until the day that my neck injury ended my career. And it was a wonderful career. It was an unbelievable time. Got to play with some exceptional human beings and play underneath some exceptional coaches and learn a crazy amount of life lessons and skills. And I immediately, when I retired, I went into sports talk radio. I was the color analyst for the team. So I did radio. I did some news work on the television, although I've got a a face for radio. And I did that for 5 years. And then after 16 years of being in San Diego, we decided it was maybe time to try something new. And we moved back to Indiana. And I've been here, and I have been helping people lose weight for the last 3 years, lose weight, get in shape, training high school boys and all kinds of people just in the physical domain. And I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, which is a CSCS, which is like what all the NFL strength coaches are, what all the college strength coaches are. So I got that certification because I knew it was the gold standard. And yeah, that's it. And I work a ton on nutrition, and I have a pretty robust online client business, and just help people lose weight and get in shape and reclaim their health. And ultimately, when you do that, you can reclaim your life. So it's a super cool experience for me. Hopefully it's a great experience for them. And I think there's nothing more valuable than your own individual health.
No question about it. Well, I'm going to go back and kind of fill in some blanks. You know, one of the things I have to know is when you were at Purdue and the coaches put you in at starting left guard, you had to have an identity consistent with that. You had to have the confidence consistent with that. But you had no reason to have any of that. Right?
Yeah.
What was it about your persona that Tiller or whoever the coach was like, hey, we're just gonna bet on this kid? And by that time, they probably figured out that you didn't play high school football. So your football IQ.
I'm sure they figured that out.
They went back and looked at film, and there was nothing there. So what was it about you and your belief in yourself, your persona, that enabled them to trust you enough? Because, coaches don't play players unless they trust them.
Right.
They'll play a less athletic player. They'll play a less gifted player if they trust him. So they obviously trusted you. What was the genesis behind that trust?
It was my work ethic. I worked harder and longer than everybody else. And I really believe that I worked so hard and would do anything that they asked. I became obsessed with it really quickly. Once I made the team, I mean, obviously a ton of anxiety, a ton of stress. I didn't know what I was doing. I was learning at a rapid rate. And that stress really made me, it's like I would stand at the back of the defensive tackle line when they finally moved me over there. They said, you're too slow to play linebacker. They moved me to defensive tackle. And I stood at the back of the line and I watched everybody with great focus and great intensity. And then when I got up there, I just mimicked it as best I could and took to coaching. I would say I was highly coachable, right? Like that's the one thing we look for as coaches when we're coaching a player is how coachable is he? I felt like I was highly coachable. I was eager to be coached. I was almost discouraged when I wasn't coached hard. Like I knew that if they were coaching me, they felt that there was something there. And I had to earn that ability to even be coached. So just giving everything I had on every single drill, hustling, running around, given the offensive line fits whenever I could, and really ramping up my skill set and my technical acumen, my tactical acumen as fast as I possibly could, and just being really insatiable. And then I think you also can learn and earn a ton of trust in the weight room. And what I think a lot of young players forget is that all these coaches talk to one another. And when the strength coach comes up into the team meeting and the staff meeting and they say, hey, who's really standing out? I would imagine my name came up quite a few times because I was a guy who had never been in a formal strength training program. And then when I did, I just kept putting on weight and putting on muscle and putting on strength and getting faster, even though I was gaining 30, 40, 50 pounds because I was now in a formal, organized, structured program. And I was so happy to be there. I knew what it was like in the co-rec with overcrowded and rusty weights and no access, and you're writing your own program. And all of a sudden I'm in this top-notch for the time facility, and I've got a professional strength coach who's given me orders, and I just ate every single bit of it up. It was like a kid at the playground. I just felt so lucky to be there. And I think that exuberance really showed. And I think the coaching staff really, they could see how much I'd love to be there and how much effort I gave. And it wasn't like I wasn't being a brown noser. This is just what I did because I felt really fortunate to be on the team, and I was going to give everything I had every single day because, my God, aren't we lucky to be out here? And I really, truly embodied that walk-on spirit. I was like, come on, guys, this is unbelievable. We get to play football and wear this jersey. And I never imagined, I never felt entitled that I was ever going to play. And I never even cared. It wouldn't have discouraged me one bit if I wouldn't have played or if I wouldn't have gotten a scholarship. I wasn't even allowed to eat at training table. I couldn't even eat with the team at the time. The rules were that way. So I had to go home after practice while all the other guys got to go to training table and feast. I had to go cook myself meals, and I had to go to the grocery store and buy my own food. And, I didn't care. I got to be on the team with the guys. I mean, it was so amazing to me. And I really think what earned that trust was just that work. That work. They could see how much I would put into it every single time that I was in the weight room, when we're running conditioning sessions, when we're in the meeting rooms. I'm always attentive. I'm always on time. I mean, there was never a question of, does Nick love ball? It's like, they knew I loved ball. It was just a matter of, could I get up to speed with my size? And I did.
Okay, Nick, I love your energy. It reminds me, when I first met you, you were just that happy, light-hearted guy. But let me ask you something. What you just described, anybody could do for a week.
Yeah.
But you did it every day. What was your motivation? What was your deeper why that enabled you to do it when you were sore, when it was hot, when it was cold, when you were getting the shit knocked out of you or beat out of you and you were maybe dinged up? How were you able to sustain it?
So it's funny because I read a lot of self-help books and business books and all the things and mindset, and I want to know all the details and everything. I really believe the older I get, you're born with the fire or you don't have the fire. I've got the fire and I don't know why I'm driven. And I wish I could give somebody what I have, and I wish I could give somebody the care and the energy and the enthusiasm and the positivity. I wish I could give them that. I don't know how. There isn't a formula to wake up to. What is my why? There is no why. The why is because this is how I wake up every day. I'm lucky I woke up this way. I was born this way.
That's who you are.
I'm just positive. Yeah, I'm positive, and I really, if there's really an underlying thing behind it, it would be, my dad taught me how to work exceptionally hard for an exceptionally long amount of time, so I don't feel the pressure and the stress that brings on a lot of people, because I was demanded to do a lot from an early age. And so work never felt like work. It was just what you did. Right. So when I'm sore and I'm tired, well, no crap. Everyone's sore. Everyone's tired. Everybody works hard. Everybody's stressed. But we're out here and we're lucky because, man, we get to do this. We get to play this child's game and either do it in front of fans as a walk-on for free, or you get to do it in the NFL, and every 2 weeks they cut you this huge freaking check, and it's amazing. Yeah. And I was not only doing it for free, I was paying to go to school and playing. I would pay to do this, and they're going to give me money to do this, and they're going to allow me to live this amazing life. There ain't anything better. So sometimes if you can just keep it in perspective, then I think that's probably the easiest way is hey, take a step back now. Take a step back, and I don't care who you are or if you're a football player or anybody really. Most people here in America, most people that are listening to your podcast have a life that billions of people worldwide envy. That they would trade you, they would cut off their left foot to be where you are. And it doesn't matter where you are, and it doesn't matter what your job is, they would trade for that. Because
that is true. That's a spirit of gratitude right there.
Billions of people would trade for that. Billions of people would trade for that worldwide, for sure.
Okay, I'm going to take you back to 2002. I know it's been a minute.
Yeah.
And You were running out of the tunnel for your first start on left guard. What the heck was going through your head? Did you doubt yourself? Did you have confidence? Did you say, F it, I'm just going to go do it? I mean, what was your mind? I mean, you may not be able to remember, but if you type into that moment, what was that like?
What
were your parents thinking?
I don't know what my parents were thinking. I do know when I told them that I was going to walk onto the team, they were like, Nick, you're crazy. Don't do it. You're going to get hurt. Like, this is the Big Ten. My dad was like, this is the Big Ten. You can't just go out there and play. You didn't even play. And I go, yeah, that's fine, Dad. I'll be fine. I'll be all right. I'm going to go out there and give it a try. What was my thought process in that first game? So my first game was Illinois State. My second game was Notre Dame at Notre Dame. And I grew up a Notre Dame fan, right? So that was super cool for me, the whole experience. But I never lost that feeling. That same feeling that I had every single week. And it was, am I good enough? Can I do this? Am I strong enough? Am I fast enough? Did I study enough? There's always, for me, I never got rid of that uncertainty. It never went away every single week, but that helped me dial in the details. And that created a sense of urgency around the work. And that made it fun, to be honest. Like, that fear is what made it fun. So the way I kind of describe it is, you think about running out of the tunnel. The tunnel's sweet because they call your name and you're like running out, like, from Purdue. It's like, holy crap, they're yelling my name. Like, fans are cheering for me individually. Like, that's super rad, right? But I always describe it as the national anthem's playing when it kind of has built to that apex and you're standing on that white line and you're looking across at Richard Seymour, Vince Wilfork, or Albert Hainsworth, and you're like, holy crap. Like, I'm out of breath. I'm out of breath standing here thinking about, I'm going to fight that dude for 3.5 hours. And if he wanted to, he may be able to knock my head off my shoulders, but I'm going to give him hell. And so there's kind of this feeling of, if you've ever jumped off of a high cliff into a body of water down below, there's kind of that F it feeling, like, I'm going for it. I just got to go. I'm just going to step off of here and we're going to see what happens. And that's really what it is. And it's I mean, like, I get cold chills thinking about it, right? Like, running out of that tunnel, standing on that sideline, looking over there. I'm about to fight this guy for 3 hours and I'm going to do my best to wear him out. And hopefully I don't get embarrassed on national television. Let's go, and kind of, it's like the saying that the joke that's, what's a redneck's last words? Hey, y'all, watch this. Mine was like, shoot, why not? Yeah. Hey, you want to walk onto the football team? Sure, I'll try. You want to block that guy? Sure, I'll try. It's always just a sure, I'll try. I'll give it a go. I mean, what's the worst that could happen to me? I get embarrassed? Like, who cares? Like, once you get over being embarrassed or ashamed or whatever, like, who cares? Just get out there and give them hell.
Well, Nick, you obviously had a fantastic senior year at Purdue. You got invited to the combine. You went to the Senior Bowl. You were the third pick in the third round. Marty Schottenheimer, I believe, was your coach.
He was, yeah.
And I can remember talking to you during OTAs. And you said something like this, and keep in mind that's been a minute, so I might be a little bit off. But you said, hey, I got him in my palm. I'm like, who you got in the palm? I got the offense in my palm. I'm like, well, okay, that's cool. Maybe the offensive linemen are respecting you. You're a young rookie. You're young whippersnapper. No, I got Phil Rivers in my palm. And I'm like, what? And then you end up getting a new contract after 2 years, going to the Pro Bowl after that. So what was your mindset when you showed up in San Diego with all those guys you've been watching on TV that 3 years before, it wasn't even a possibility you would ever be there? I mean, the odds were zero. It wasn't 1 in a million. It wasn't 1 in a billion. It was zero.
Yeah, there was no chance that was going to happen. Yeah. And 0% chance that was going to happen. And then when I got there, just how good can I get? How good can I get and how fast can I get that good? So that was every single day, just really making a concerted effort to do my best and just really give my best effort. And I wish I had some like elaborate plan or, write these 5 steps down. It's just show up and give everything you have every day and listen to the coaches and break down the details. And when he gave us a technique, I would take it home and I would practice that technique over and over and over again on my own in the hotel room, in the dark, hours of steps. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. He said to do this. Okay. Practice it. And then when you show up the next day, I'm 5 times better than the guys who went home and sat on their couch. And then with the playbook, coach said, what's really helpful is if you'll go home and you'll just draw out the plays. Well, nobody ever did that except me. And I would sit in my hotel room every night once we got that playbook for 2 hours minimum and draw every play in that playbook. Every single play times the 8 defenses that were there, and I would draw them left and right every single night for 2 hours. That way they were burnt into my head. And that's how you memorize a playbook. And I still think that's the best way to memorize a playbook is draw those plays up. So, you could do the minimum and you could do what they ask you to do and everything like that. Yes. But then what else can I do? And how else can I accelerate my learning curve? So that for me was really the key, was taking it, listening really intently to what they're trying to get across, focusing on all those drills, just like I did at Purdue, watching everybody do it, listening when the coach is coaching somebody else. It's easier to listen than when he's coaching me even. So I'm watching him coach. I'm watching all the details of what he's doing. I'm watching him install the offense, and then I'm going home and I'm drawing it up. I mean, there's so many things, like you're learning a completely different language, and I remember there was one point I was probably, it was 04 and there was 010. It was the lockout. And I remember teaching the offense while there was no coaches there. And I had a guy ask, well, why do they call it over dink? Why do they call it over sink and under wink? Why do they call it that? And I was like, oh, well, look who's in the bubble. The Sam's in the bubble. That's the sink. When it's dink, it's a double bubble. So, that's why they call it a dink. And then why do they call it a wink? Well, the Will's in the bubble, and the Sam's on the line. So that's why they call it that. Right. And it still just comes back like it was yesterday because you just burn it in there. It's just burnt in there. Right. I don't have to think of which words I'm going to use with you. I just have the language down. Right. So when you have the language down, this is just what it is. Well, guys had been in that offense for 5 or 6 years and they're like, oh, I never knew that. I always wondered why we call it that. I'm like, yeah, well, I spent all these hours drawing these things up. And that way, when you study that playbook super hard, you watch the film super hard, and you transpose the one onto the other, right? So I take the playbook and all those drawings that I've done, I transpose it onto the film, and then I take it out to the walkthrough, and that gets printed on top of that like a carbon paper. And then the walkthrough gets into the practice, and then the practice goes in the game. And then when there's any discrepancies in space, I've seen all those and visualized those layers on top of one another as they come up onto the game. And I know there's a discrepancy. There's always a reason for it. So why is there a hole over there? Well, they're going to bring something over here and they're going to fill that hole. So when you've done all that studying, then it just shows up on game day. And all of a sudden you've got these crazy layers, and it just makes your job so much easier because you put in the time. It's just hours on hours on hours.
Well, you described it to me just right now like a chess match. It's like playing chess, right? There's a rhyme or reason. When someone you're playing chess against makes a move, if they're good, there's a reason for it. It's setting something up.
Yes.
They just didn't do it for nothing, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, let's just move that for fun. No, there's a purpose. And I think the thing that people don't sometimes realize with football, especially in the trenches, is there is a rhyme or reason for everything they do.
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
Okay, so
it is super chessy. We're trying to outflank you, and you're trying to outflank us. It's the whole game where we're trying to puncture you and create a bubble somewhere. And that way we got a little seam. And it's all just strategy, trying to position your place and make a net to either catch somebody, which we do in pass protection. We're trying to create a net, cast this net, and we're going to put our 5 on your 5 most dangerous guys. And in thinking in pass coverage, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to cast a net to be able to catch the ball, or let the guy maybe catch the ball and then tackle him in a short amount of space. Right? So you're just trying to prevent them from poking through the net. It's a giant game of Red Rover, Red Rover.
Yeah, it's very simple.
It's very simple. But it's simple, but it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Most things that are simple are hard. Okay. One thing you described multiple times so far is unconscious competence. Unconscious competence, where you are so competent, you've got it in your subconscious. You could be knocked out. You still know what it is. And I always describe it with people as, somebody blacks out at a party and you wake them up. You go, hey, man, what's your middle name? They always know. They may not know where they're at. They may not know who they're with. They may not know what day of the week it is, but they know their middle name because you just know. And the way you described your study habits, your process, your schedule, your basically your lessons for learning, you probably knew the offense better than anybody else in the offensive room, including the quarterback and the OC.
Not better than the quarterback. Not
better than the quarterback.
Philip knew everything. Philip knew all of our calls. I mean, his brain is so wonderful. I mean, to be able to have that, and that's, you can't teach that, right? So that's just brain talent. That's the kid who on his assessments is all 99th percentile on both math and language arts. It's the kid that's just through the roof. Oh, Andy's 6'5", 240 pounds, and a really good athlete. So on top of that, he's got this incredible computational power with a really fast processor that can see it, can dictate it, got great language skills to be able to get it out, can tell everybody what they're doing at a moment's notice, and can then handle his own business. I mean, it's just so rare that you get people like that. It's so, I mean, his brain was, and he had a photographic memory. And that is one of the coolest powers that you could possibly have, as a photographic memory. So he tells a story, and I'll share it here, is the first day that he showed up to training camp or OTAs, Cam Cameron, he was in a room, by the way, with Drew Brees was the starting quarterback. He was the young first round pick. And then we had Doug Flutie in the room too. And Cam hands out the call sheet for the day. And he says, okay, I want you to write all the plays up on the board and what it looks like. And Phil's like, you want us to what? And he couldn't do it. And he's like, I didn't really look at it. And Cam goes, well, that's your job. That's your job to look at it. And so he gave him one to take home and study over the night. And he came back and he had all the calls, first down calls, short yardage calls, third down calls. Here's our goal line runs, all in their own little boxels, like a call sheet, right? That an offensive coordinator would have on the field. And he drew it up verbatim on the board, everything in its spot, because he had that kind of brain power that he could
That's
see
amazing.
it, lock it in. And what can you do to teach that? You can't. Right. So it's an interesting thing that I think about, and I talk about a decent amount now that my kids are in youth sports and everything, is like, well, you talk to a lot of parents, like, how did you get there? How did you do? And the questions are all coming like, well, what can I do to get my kid there? And I'll be like, well, you have to work really hard. Like, there's no doubt you have to work exceptionally hard. However, you also just have to be blessed. You have to meet the threshold. Like, in some athletes will never meet the minimum standard athletically or brain power wise or from a talent standpoint to be there. So they can't. So there's nothing they could do. I had a conversation with a guy that I was training at the gym who felt like, man, if I would have, he went to college, he played at Indiana University. If I would have, focused a little bit more, been a little bit more disciplined, who knows? And I'm like, Yeah, maybe, but maybe that discipline is just inherent to me, or maybe I was lucky that I was born to the dad that I was born to, and like, so I was given that discipline. I was put on the path of discipline, so it was easier for me to take and run with and get to the next level. But also, I'm 6'4" with broad shoulders, strong back, and a long wingspan and a good first step. Like, I hate to tell you, you can't teach that. There's no
There's
amount of
some things you
training.
can't teach.
There's no amount of training that'll give you a big wingspan and a good first step and a 34-inch vertical. Like, it just happened. How's it happen? I don't know. It just happened.
Okay, so confession time.
Yes.
You never weighed what they said you weighed.
I never did.
Okay. I remember at one point you were weighing.
God, I wish they didn't want me to weigh so much all the time. I didn't need it.
I remember they were wanting you to weigh like 295 and they were listing you like at 290 and you weighed like 269, 270. So how did you compete? Because you were still awesome. I mean, you played a decade in the NFL and you made the Pro Bowl and you were, leader on your team, all these things. How did you do it against the Vince Wilforks of the world that are weighing 350 pounds, 330 pounds?
Yeah.
Is that where wrestling came in?
It was wrestling. I wish they wouldn't have been so adamant about me being 300 pounds. It really was detrimental to my game. The only time that I did start to put on weight was out of necessity after I had a Liz Frank injury. And my game had to evolve. Otherwise, I was going to evolve my way out of the game because I just was less athletic than I was when I first came in. When I first was in, I was a really, really athletic center. I could reach, and I never lost the ability to reach somebody, but I did lose a little bit of my longer speed, my cutting ability, certain things. I lost a little bit of that athleticism when I got a plate 7 screws and 3 wires put in my foot. That slowed me down. And the doctor was like, hey, you got a 50% chance of ever playing again. I realized my game needed to change then because I wasn't going to be able to win on my athleticism. So I did end up getting up in the 290s, putting on a little extra fat because I had kind of maxed out my frame as far as musculature went. And so I did have to evolve. And at the end of my career, I just ended up being bigger, naturally settling in a little bit and having more mass on me, which was totally fine. But I really won being lighter. And I remember my second year playing at the end of the season at 268 pounds. I was tiny. It was 268 as a center in the NFL. And I didn't really get beat. And I certainly didn't get beat because of my size, but it was because of my technique was exceptional. And it's not like from a braggadocious standpoint. I really prided myself on having exceptional technique because that was the only way that I was going to be able to get it done. And I learned from the best in the game early on in pass protection. Hudson Houck was the guy. He was the offensive line coach for Jackie Slater, for Tony Munoz, for the Dallas offensive line in the 90s. He was the first $1 million offensive line coach when he left us and went to Miami. He gave me film when I first got to San Diego, like actual tapes of the Cowboys offensive line. And he showed me film of Mark Stepnoski and he said, I want you to emulate everything Mark Stepnoski does. And so I used to get to watch Mark Stepnoski practice one-on-one pass pro. And right next to him was Larry Allen and Eric Williams and Mark Tuinei, right? I was like, I got to watch all those guys in practice, which you get to watch them in a game. It's different. But when you get to watch them in one-on-one pass pro and they're scrimmaging against Green Bay, and you get to watch Reggie White going against these guys, and then it goes from the practice, and then it goes to their preseason game. And Hudson used to go, hey, watch Mark. They used to try to put Reggie White over the top of Mark because Mark was like 265, but he was wired for sound. He was one of the best all time. Mark Stepnoski, he was one of the best all time. His technique was impeccable. It was impeccable technique. And so they would put Reggie White over the top of him thinking, oh, the big boy's just going to yard house this little center. And it didn't ever work. It didn't work because Mark would punch him and he would separate and he would have great hands and great feet and cover him up. And I watched him and I studied the crap out of him. And Hudson's technique, I still teach it to all the kids that I get to work with now. And it's the lost art in football. Why are offensive linemen getting beat more regularly by defensive linemen? And everyone's like, well, you can't stop these defensive linemen. They're faster than they've ever been and stronger than they've ever been. No, they're not. The offensive lineman's not using the techniques they're lost. They've been lost. The guy's footwork's off. They're not throwing punches the way that they need to throw punches. Because that hasn't been passed down, I think, properly. And so,
no, I believe you. The gap between D-line.
Technique is the answer.
Hey, that's how you beat somebody that's more athletic than you. Technique.
I never blocked anybody that I was bigger than, stronger than, or faster than. Not one person. Not one time. Not even in practice. There wasn't a guy that I was bigger, stronger, or faster than. Not once. And somehow I stuck around for 11 years.
That's how it works, man.
Technique.
That's how it works. Technique. It is technique. Technique,
and we know the plays, and I know his assignment, and I can just beat him to the spot and be in really good body position. Yeah, it's Absolutely. Technique, man. It's technique.
What was the biggest game you ever played in? We got the Super Bowl coming up. What's the biggest game you ever played in?
AFC Championship game, 2007 against New England when they were 17-0 when they played us.
Oh, God, I remember that now.
Yeah, they were 17-0, and then remember they beat us 21-12. We couldn't punch it in the red zone. We didn't have LT. He had a hurt MCL, which fans give him crap for, which I think is total bull crap. Like, you don't think LT would have wanted to play if he could have played and been his best? I think it was somebody was just – I saw a recent post about that. It's like, well, he didn't play in the AFC Championship game. It's like all that dude went through and put his body through, and you don't think if he could have, he would have. I think it was incredibly honorable of him to allow Michael Turner to take the reps and him just be like, I'm sorry I can't go, guys. Like, that's incredible. Phillip Rivers had a torn ACL that game that he tore the week before in Indianapolis. I had a Liz Frank. Antonio Gates ended up, he had a, I hate this term, turf toe. He tore the plate off of his big toe, and he dislocated his big toe and was hobbling around the entire year. So our red zone weapons were just not what they needed to be to beat that team, which, you know, I mean, Belichick's defenses don't get enough credit for how freaking good and how disciplined they were. And we moved the ball all up and down the field, and we kicked 4 field goals, and we lost 21-12. That was the biggest game.
So being a 11-year NFL vet, playing in the AFC Championship game, didn't get to play in the Super Bowl. We got the Super Bowl coming. How is the Super Bowl different from any of these other games? How are the playoffs different? Because there's a different energy, different magnitude to the game, but it's still the same game. Same field, same ball, same everything. But how do you regulate your emotions and your preparation for things like that?
Yeah, it just everything, more chemicals running through your body, you know, more hormones, more adrenaline, more dopamine, more energy in the stadium. It's just the whole thing's more like I'm almost even short of breath just putting myself back there physically, like mentally. It's like, whoo, it's so fun. There's nothing like it. Like, so you go from a regular Sunday game at 1:00, sun shining. Yeah, this is cool. And then, late in your career, you're like, what are we having for dinner tonight? You're sitting on the sideline. And you're like, my emotions aren't getting going. You're 100 starts deep, whatever. And you kind of need those Thursday, those Sunday, those Monday night games to ramp you up a little bit. And the more you do those, they kind of become a little bit more ho-hummy. But the playoffs never get that way. They never get to the point where it's like, yeah, I've really settled in here. Hey, you ain't settling into the playoffs. Like, you feel short of breath almost the whole game, because it's so critical, and you feel the juice that the crowd provides, whether you're home or away. It's just a hum. The stadium's just humming the whole time. So you really feel that vibe, and that's one of the greatest challenges. And that's why, like last week, I felt that Kansas City was going to beat Baltimore. They've just done this. They've been there. So it is for them more routine. The AFC Championship game for them has become their base camp. That's just kind of where they know, they know they're getting there. They're going to get to the AFC Championship game, and they're going to launch from there. And so they're really comfortable there. They're really comfortable in the playoffs. So they play with more poise. Where what did Baltimore do? They were doing dumb things. They had bad penalties. They had personal fouls. They were always in fights after the game because their emotions got the best of them. And the longer that I'm out, the more I see it. And I've got these young kids running around the house. I'm like, it's the same. An adult on a football field, unable to control, or the emotional moment is a little big for him still. He doesn't have enough experience in this moment. So he's struggling, and he's lashing out, or he's doing something he wouldn't have normally done in week 14, 15, 16, or even in the division game. But here we are in the championship game, and it's at home, and we're freaking out, man. And so that's where Kansas City has such an advantage to me. They've done this. They've been there. They're cool under pressure. And you have this real sense of calm that, like, once you've done something, you can do it again. It's just a matter of getting into that flow state and letting it happen.
Well, the difference between Kansas City, both sides have tremendous players, but the difference to me is the head coaches. Andy Reid has been to so many NFC Championship games. Yeah. He's done what he's done with Kansas City. And Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons when they were winning 28-3 and lost in the Super Bowl. And then they lost to Kansas City, a couple years ago. So
they were up by 14. They were up against Kansas City pretty big too, yeah.
Yes, they were. And so, just as a coach, I saw Shanahan, and I'm a fan of Shanahan. I love his offenses. I think he's a fabulous coach. But I saw his pressure against the Lions on the sidelines. You could just feel he was just like, "Oh shit, we're behind. We got to get it going." Yeah. And so to me, I think the key for the 49ers is if they get ahead and they get a nice lead, they could just run with it. But if Kansas City gets ahead, it's going to be really tough on the 49ers.
If San Francisco gets ahead, they need to commit to the run. So Shanahan in every pressure situation, and this is Mike too, when he was coaching, every pressure-packed situation, what's his natural tendency? Where does he skew? He skews towards the pass instead of leaning on the run a little bit more. When thinking that Atlanta Super Bowl, run the ball a little bit more. You win the game. You don't need 2 passes in a row. You don't need to stop the clock. You don't need a sack or a penalty, right? So let the offensive player of the year do his thing.
Yes.
Get that run game.
Yeah, 23.
You've got
23 is pretty good.
Blocking tight end. You got an unbelievable blocking fullback, and McCaffrey is a beast. Let those guys do some damage. Yeah, and maybe take a little bit of the pressure off of Purdy.
I saw McCaffrey play a playoff game his senior year in high school in Denver, and he had out of 14 games, he had 9 first touchdowns as a senior. First time he touched the ball. Whether it was a punt return, whether it was a kickoff return, it didn't matter. It was the first touch was a touchdown. My boys and I went up there, and we left at halftime. It was over at halftime. And McCaffrey, the first time he touched the ball, returned a punt 75 yards for a touchdown. It was just a different gear than anybody else on the field. It was amazing.
Yeah. It's cool when you see that, gears. Right?
Oh, yeah. Greatness.
You see it. It's just, at all levels, you can see the ones that pop.
Absolutely. All right, let's shift gears. You're a dad. How old are your boys?
12 and 10.
Oh my gosh. What are their
12 and 10.
names?
Sixth grade and fourth grade. Hudson is the oldest, and Teddy is the youngest.
Okay, you didn't name him after Houck, did you?
I did.
Did you really?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, named him after my offensive line coach.
That is amazing.
I thought his name was the most badass. When I heard it, Hudson Houck. First you think of the Bruce Willis character, Hudson Hawk. And I was like, Hudson Houck? That is so badass. And then I was like, my dad is Herman Harold Hardwick III. And I was like, I would never do that to my kid. But I could name him Hudson Harold Hardwick. And we get away with that one. And I really like the name ever since I first heard it. And I really think he made my career, because if you've got a center who can pass block one-on-one, it just opens the doors for the offense. And he made my career, got me started off right. I think of, like, I came in with Robert Gallery. Robert didn't have Hudson Houck as his coach. Him and Jake Grove. Remember, Jake Grove was an All-American center. He was the first one off the board from Virginia Tech. He was all-world. The Senior Bowl, he was killing everybody. Like, we would go watch Jake's film after practice just to see who he killed that day. And his career never went the way that it should have, because his technique never progressed, because they hired a college coach who was a first-time NFL coach, and they never kept growing and improving. So I give so much of my credit to him and Hal Hunter and Jack Henry. And then at the end, Joe D'Alessandris gave me a really awesome last 2 years. So, yeah, a lot in debt to the offensive line coaches, but Hudson, he won the name game.
That's fun. That's real fun. Okay. Your boys are 12 and 10. Play football, flag football, soccer, lacrosse. Football. What are they doing?
Football and lacrosse. Lacrosse, and we football and lacrosse, and we lift weights in the off seasons. And
so Hudson is forecast their position.
Okay, so Hudson's currently a quarterback, and we play in a travel football league here in Indiana. And he was, for our 5th and 6th grade travel team, he ended up earning all-state honors. I was offensive coordinator, and I didn't do this intentionally, but like, we throw the ball a decent amount, just because it was the easiest way for us to move the ball, was we threw the ball. So he's very cerebral. He's super lucky. Like, he's a 99th percentile test score kid. He's got that lucky brain. Very, very talented brain. And we'll see if his body catches up. As you know, he can't tell at this age. You can't tell what his body's going to do. So who knows? But right now he's playing quarterback, and he plays defense in lacrosse. He's a long pole in lacrosse. And I love that sport. Love it. And then
what about Teddy? What position?
Teddy played quarterback this year because he's physically very gifted and athletic, and so they just let him back there, and he runs around and he throws the ball. He's got a good arm, although he doesn't work at it at all. But he does. He's a worker. He loves to lift. He loves to run. He'll be outside. He's like me, personality wise. He's more like me. So he gets on something, and he's like a dog on a scent, and he's just going to go. And he is a lacrosse player, and he's a midfielder in lacrosse. But in football, depending on how big he gets, he'll in my opinion right now, he'll most likely be a tight end. Because he's fast and he's got great hands. He just happened to play quarterback because it's 4th grade football. But they play tackle football.
Okay, so you mentioned early on that sometimes parents ask you how they can help their kids go places. And the fact that you've paved the way already in your family, your kids, it would be very normal for them to think, hey, I want to be like dad. And it's like, I'm going to listen to dad. I'm going to do what dad did. I'm going to utilize his resources and his connections. Okay. But what are the things that you do or have done or plan to do to make sure that they don't burn out? Because a lot of kids burn out around 14 just because of the pressure. And then there's girls come in and there's other things to do. Right now, they're just at the cusp of, they're in the perfect age right now. They've got the physical abilities and they're learning how to work. It's a great age. But man, when they hit about 13, 14, things start changing. And a lot of times it's because their friends have different goals and dreams than they do. Now, I'm not superimposing anything on your boys. I'm not saying they want to play in the NFL. I'm not saying they want to play college football. But let's say they did. What do you have to do as a dad to protect them so that they don't get burnt out and get caught up into it and they peak in high school or they peak in college?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think the first thing that I would say is, to your point of they may see it as a great avenue, is I tell them all the time how lucky I got. Yes, Dad did the work, but don't forget that I got blessed with this body, and I got blessed that I grew at the right time, and I got blessed with an opportunity. There's so many, and I got blessed that I stayed healthy. And there's so many things that I let them know, and I hope they hear it, is really two things. You're only in control of so much of this journey. And there's some other force at play that has a lot more say than you do. So you have to do your part if you want this to happen, but you're not completely in control of it, unfortunately. So there's that. And the other part that I'm really conscious about telling them is, I don't care if you play football. I really do not care if you play football or not. It in no way affects my love for you and how much I'm going to cheer for you in whatever you end up being in life. If you tell me, though, that you want to be a football player, I'm going to tell you, age appropriate, what needs to be getting done at this time. And so you can either do that or you cannot. I'll give you very clear assessments of where you're at, what we need to work on. I'm very direct with them. I do not lie. I do not falsely elevate their confidence. I tell them very directly where they're at, and they tell me where they want to get, and I'll do my best to help them get to where they want to be. And then my wife especially is really, really conscious of burnout. So just like you said, she is super conscious of burnout, and by proxy, I am too. And I really believe in pacing appropriately and realizing that the kid at 10, 11, and 12, who's the all-star, is probably not going to be the all-star unless he's the freak outlier like Patrick Mahomes or Christian McCaffrey. And I can promise you that my boys are not that. So we are going to pace ourselves appropriately. We're going to take appropriate downtime, and we take all winter off. Like, we don't jump from sport to sport to sport to sport, because I want them to be kids. I want them to have downtime. I want them to be exuberant when they show up to the next season and the next sport. And I want to give everything they have. And we talk about three things: attitude, effort, and focus. I do not care, and I stress this more than anything, is I do not care what your performance is. I do not care. You may show up one day and be unbelievable, but if your attitude was crap and you were a poor teammate and showed bad leadership skills, I will wear you out on the way home. You will get it from me for the next 36 hours if you were a poor leader, poor attitude, me guy. We're not doing that. I care about those three things and those three things only. I want to see exceptional effort, attitude, and focus, and that's really all I believe that you can control. And so we focus and harp on those things, and that's really it. So I'm never a performance-based guy. Like, you're not winning my love with a good game. I'll be happy for you. I'll cheer for you. I will only invest more in you if you keep showing me those things over and over and over again. And so hopefully they've gotten that message, and I know they have, because that's what it was ingrained in me, and that's what I'm hoping to ingrain in them. It's just, you show up with a smile on your face, you work your ass off, and you're a good teammate. You give everything you have to that moment. And everything seems to work itself out if you do those three things the way that it should.
I love that. I think the parents that are performance-based do set their kids up for failure. It's just a matter of time. It doesn't matter how talented they are. It doesn't matter their motivation, their effort, all this stuff. If it's all based on performance, whether you won or not, whether you scored or not, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And so I think those things, and I'm going to add two things if I may. One
Please,
is that
yeah.
your
Love
identity,
to learn.
your identity as a father has to be independent as your identity as a coach. And
that's hard.
It's hard, but you can do it. Okay?
You can do it.
And the way it works is, like you might be watching a game on TV and there's some like really unique play and you want both your boys to have higher football IQ and you go, hey, you guys want to check something out? And they go, no, Dad, we're busy. You don't show it to them. You just don't because they didn't want to see it.
That's
okay?
Cool, yeah.
Now you might mark it and show it to them later if they ever want to see it later. But if they never want to see it, they miss that opportunity. Because if you don't do it that way, you're the coach.
Yes.
And the other thing that I would do to accentuate that point is on the drive to practice, if you're coaching them, hey, I'm going to be coach at practice today. Because at some point in time, they start getting butthurt when you start giving them criticism because they don't feel love from their dad, but you're not their dad, you're their coach.
That's right.
Right? And then when you get in the car to come home, right? So I had this game of I've got the coach hat on, and I've got the dad hat on. All the time.
I wanted to make one that said dad and coach.
Yes. Yeah. Flip it around. Okay. One in the front, one in the back. And even with JoJo, now it's like I have conversations with him where, hey, I'm your agent. As your agent, I think this. But as your dad, I don't really care. I really don't. You're not going to win my love or the connection is not going to change based upon whether you make it or not, and how well you make it and how well you do. So I would make sure you're very conscientious of that now because they will become more conscientious of that as they get older.
That's really good. I've kind of come to the resolution, I guess, recently that would say, I can't care for you. I care for you, but I can't care for you, or I can't care more for your success than you care for your success. So I can't make you care, right? I can't give you my care. Like, I really want them to win. I really want them to succeed. I want them to have all of these lessons that I've learned and have this amazing experience. I really want that, but I can't make them want that. And they'll show how much they care based on how much they work. They'll tell me how much they care. And so like me trying to give them that, no, you got to come sit here and watch this play. Like, you're right. That's a great point you make. Like, if they don't want it right then, that's on them. And I can't care for them. And I think that's a really great point. I like that.
Well, the other point I would make, and this will be my final one, is that when things get hard, the thing my go-to every time things got hard was, this is your time to exit stage left if you want. You can quit now.
Yeah.
Tear an ACL. Oh, you can quit. Hey, you're only QB2 and not Q. Oh, you can. Hey, you don't have to do this. Because what kids do is they want empathy. It's like, this is hard. Dad, it's really hard. Oh, man, you should just chill out, man. Maybe you should do something else.
That's right.
And then guess what happens every time you do that? They have to ask themselves, for themselves, by themselves, for, everything related to them. Do I want to do this? Do I want to put in the effort? Do I want to put in the sacrifice? Do I want to put in the time? Do I want to deal with this adversity? Or is it not for me and I'm doing it for somebody else? And that's when their hunger grows, or it doesn't.
They double down. Yeah, they double down usually.
They usually double down because they don't have to do it. So if you think about, there's this concept in mindset that I talk about, where when a player is trying to live up to the standard of his coach, you got this little tug of war with the coach all the time. Like your little voice is saying, hey, am I working hard enough to get his approval? Am I working hard enough to get by? Okay. No, your standard has to be your standard. And if your standard's not higher than your coach's, you got a problem.
That's right. Yeah.
And if your standard's higher than your coach's, you don't have to worry about him.
Ever.
Ever.
He's never going to be an issue.
Ever.
Yeah, your coach will never be an issue if your standards are higher. Yeah, that's great. The other, when you talked about pulling back exit stage left, I think it's a really interesting thing because energy is a bit of a vacuum, right? So if I come barking in and leaning in, hey, you got to do this, you got to do that. Well, what does he naturally do, right? He's going to pull back. Well, if you pull back, he leans in. Watch what happens the next time you're listening to radio and the DJ on the other end pauses for 3 seconds. I bet you lean in and listen to those next words real close, right? So it's the same thing. There's that time and that space and that energy gap, and you're allowing him to fill it instead of you filling it really quickly. I think that's a multi-layered approach there. I like that.
Well, I made the mistake of having the boys play too many sports because they love competition. So they played basketball and soccer and football and track and everything else, baseball. And I can remember one of the boys had 2 games, one of each sport on the same day. And one was in Springs and one was in Denver. And we're driving to Denver, and he has a meltdown on the way to Denver. I'm like, bro, what's going on? He's like, I really didn't want to play soccer today. And so we had this nice little conversation. We didn't get there till halftime. And I said, you just have to finish the season, and then you can step out. But you have to You can't quit in the middle of the year. But he shouldn't have probably been playing that year anyway. So that's where, you don't know where that perfect line is.
Right.
Until you cross it.
Hey, and nobody knows what we're doing. You do your best. You have your principles. You got your fundamentals that you lean on. You're a family that works hard, and we compete. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that was too hard. Okay, you know what? We're going to learn, but we're going to have to finish the season because that's also one of our underlying principles is that we finish what we start. So we got to finish this. I know it's going to suck. I know it's hard, and I know you don't want to play, but we got to do it because we signed up to do it, and we can't let everybody down. We'll learn our lesson next season, and we won't put you on 2 teams at once.
And my last thought is there's a gentleman that has analyzed brain types by position. And so back like 25 years ago, I had my clients take tests. I wanted to see if their personality was in alignment with their position. So just look at football. I like that. So like both your boys play quarterback, but you're telling me that one's not really a quarterback and one is. But it's like, because he doesn't like the repetition. He doesn't want to go out in the backyard and practice doing the same 3-step drops 400 times. Or maybe the other kid does. Yeah, he wants to play. So both of my boys were quarterbacks, but one of them after 5 minutes is like, okay, let's play a game. No, bro, we're doing drills. So he would literally go in the house and leave, and the other kid would stay out and we'd do drills. And so, if you think about being a punt returner, you could be fast, you could be elusive, but if you can't handle the pressure of somebody flying down to hit you, you can't play punt returner. Right?
The worst position in the world.
Yeah, so it'd be really interesting. Be interesting for your boys to see what their brain type is, just from a standpoint of like your son that's very athletic. Is he a linebacker? Is he an amazing athletic guard? Is he a tight end, like you said, or is he something else? So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to wrap this up.
I'm fascinated with that stuff. I could go on forever about that. I also think there's something to birth order that factors into all of that. In my position room, I did a rough poll one year. I was like, what's the birth order here? Most of the guys, there was only 2 out of 12 of us that were firstborn. And everybody else only 2 out of 12 were firstborn.
Mm.
And I think more quarterbacks are firstborn, and they like bossing people around. And they got no problem doing it, right? You go here, you go here, you go there, do that. They got no problem doing it. That's kind of the way they're wired. They're very structured, very rigid. But a lot of positions aren't made for firstborns. You got some of the impulse control may be a little too strong in a quarterback to go just cut it loose. You can just cut it loose, man.
Okay, I'm going to break this down. You and who else were the firstborn? Were you the firstborn? You were not.
I was the baby.
Well,
I was the baby. I do have some of those tendencies, and I can act that way if I need to, but that's not my natural tendency. My wife's the firstborn.
Okay, so
do that game, by the way. Do that game. How many of your friends are oldest is one of the spouses, and then youngest is? Very rarely will you find two firstborn in a relationship. Very rarely.
They butt heads too much. They butt heads.
Can't do it. Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Nick, I wanted to talk to you about so many other things. We just, we might have to do this again sometime. Give everybody a little bit of a summary of today. You have clients, you're helping people lose weight. Be a little, this is your opportunity to kind of tout your business and your coaching. Share with us.
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about me, just go to my Instagram. It's at Nick Hardwick, and there you can follow the links there. Also, hardwicklife.com will give you a ton of information about the programs that I run. So I help a whole bevy of people online. I do an online coaching, which is a lot of focus on nutrition and basic programming in the strength and conditioning world, a lot of lifestyle coaching and helping people lose weight, because weight loss for many, many people that have a longer way to go than others isn't about what you're willing to do. It's not about working out harder or doing more, waking up at 5 a.m. like Jocko Willink and David Goggins. It's about sleeping, about stress management, about making great food choices, about walking, and about some resistance training, incorporating that into your life. So I do that for a whole host of people. We've got a ton of success. I primarily work with larger men that are really successful, most of them businessmen that have worked themselves to the detriment of their physical being. And so I teach them how to find that balance to get their health back by losing weight. And it's such an amazing process for me. And it's amazing when they realize that they've got all the power and the ability that they need to live a long, healthy life, and they lose 50, 60, 70 pounds. It is one of the most beautiful things to see. People, when you know they've got it and you know that it's going to stay off forever. So that's a super cool thing. So I wake up in the morning at about 5 a.m. I work with clients online for an hour, 2 hours. Then I go this morning, I trained a high school boy from 7 to 8. I trained 2 middle-aged adult males from 9 to 10. And then I trained a high-level female rower from 12 to 1. And here we are. And then the kids come home at 3 and we'll be off to lacrosse tonight and get to do my dad's stuff. So that's life.
That's the Nick Hardwick life. Hey, Nick, thank you so much for being on Pro Mindset. Stay on here for a second, but thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate you, buddy.
Hey, it's Craig Domann, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.